The world was on fire. Captain Adrian Wolf groaned as his head slammed against the wreckage of his crashed transport. The red warning lights inside the cockpit flickered, barely illuminating the smoke-filled space. Sparks rained from torn panels. A distant alarm beeped, warning him of something he already knew. They had crashed behind enemy lines. Adrian unbuckled his harness and forced himself up. His body ached, his ribs throbbed, but he pushed the pain aside. Survival first, pain later. Status, he barked, coughing against the acrid smoke. No answer. He turned and saw Sergeant Bonner slumped forward, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. Adrian shook his shoulder. "Bonner, wake up." Bonner groaned and blinked blearily. That could have gone better. Adrian allowed himself a quick smirk. If Bonner was joking, he wasn't dead. "Get moving," Adrian ordered, already unsealing the emergency hatch. The rest of the squad, 5 men and 2 women, were stirring, but one wasn't moving. Private Kell's seat had been impaled by a metal shard. His eyes were still open. He hadn't made it. Adrian clenched his jaw. No time to mourn. As the squad gathered their weapons and supplies, Bonner checked the comms. Long range is dead. Short range is full of static. That was bad. They were completely cut off. Adrian reached the emergency hatch and pushed it open. The night sky greeted him, but it wasn't peaceful. Far above, the burning wreckage of their destroyed stealth transport rained down like shooting stars. The AI-controlled orbital cannons had found them. And if the AI had found them in space, Adrian's heart pounded. He activated his helmet HUD, and a motion scanner flickered to life. Red dots, too many red dots. "Move. Now," he ordered, stepping out into the alien jungle. The ground was uneven, covered in twisted black vines and jagged rock formations. A low mist rolled through the landscape, making everything feel surreal, like a nightmare. But the real nightmare was behind them. Bonner's voice was tense. "Captain, I'm getting heat signatures. Hunter-killer drones." Adrian froze. A sharp mechanical whirring filled the air. Then another. He raised his rifle and gestured for the others to take cover. Through the mist, a metallic shape emerged, a black, insect-like drone with razor limbs and glowing red eyes. It hovered above the wreckage, scanning, searching, looking for them. Adrian's breath slowed. If the drone saw them, they were dead. No one moved. No one breathed. Then, the drone twitched. Its red eyes locked onto something. A faint beeping sound. Adrian frowned. Beeping. And then he realized. The distress beacon. The ship's automatic beacon had activated on impact. The drone turned toward the cockpit, scanning, moving closer. Adrian's mind raced. If the drone scanned the bodies, it would confirm survivors. Then, the entire AI army would descend on them. Think. 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 He reached for his belt. A single EMP grenade. Too risky. If he activated it, the blast would reveal their position. Bonner, crouched beside him, seemed to have the same thought. He pointed to a piece of broken metal, a shard from the ship's hull. Adrian understood immediately. He picked up the metal shard and threw it into the jungle. Clang! The drone's head snapped toward the sound. It hesitated. Then it drifted away, following the noise. Adrian exhaled, tension flooding from his body. But before relief could settle, his motion scanner pinged again. More movement. A second drone. Closer. Adrian silently signaled his team. They had to move. Now. They crouched low, moving through the jungle. Every step felt like it might be their last. The mist swirled around them, playing tricks on their vision. The drones searched behind them, but they couldn't stay ahead forever. Then, a new sound. A guttural, inhuman growl. Adrian stopped. That wasn't a drone. The jungle fell silent. Even the machines seemed to hesitate. Another growl. Low, Menacing. Close. Adrian's instincts screamed danger. Bonner whispered, "Tell me that's just the wind." Adrian slowly turned his head and saw movement in the trees. Not drones. Not AI. Something else was hunting tonight. A shape lunged from the shadows. It was fast. Too fast. Adrian barely had time to react before something slammed into one of the drones with bone-crushing force. Metal screeched. The drone was torn apart. The AI's cold mechanical efficiency meant it had never adapted to true predators. And whatever this thing was, it was a predator. Adrian's squad froze in horror. The creature, now partially visible through the mist, was like nothing they had ever seen. A sleek, armored beast, black carapace, glowing slits where eyes should be, clawed hands dripping with what looked like acidic saliva. It turned its head toward them. Bonner gripped his rifle. "Ah, orders, Captain." Adrian's mind raced. The AI was scanning for humans. The creature was hunting anything that moved. That meant only one thing. They had two enemies now, and they were caught in the middle. Adrian made his decision. Run. Adrian didn't need to say it twice. The squad moved. Fast. The jungle was thick with twisted vines and uneven terrain, but they ran like hell was on their heels. Because it was. Behind them, the creature let out another guttural growl, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the very ground. The AI drones, confused by the unexpected predator, hesitated for only a moment before recalibrating. Then their red eyes flashed brighter, and they began their pursuit. Adrian leaped over a fallen log, landing hard but keeping his balance. His breath was ragged, and his muscles screamed, but he didn't dare slow down. The squad was moving in a staggered formation, staying low, weaving through the dense foliage. If they ran in a straight line, the drones would have a clear shot. If they slowed, the creature would catch them. Either way, they were dead. A rapid mechanical clicking filled the air. The drones were gaining. Bonner, just a step behind Adrian, risked a glance over his shoulder. "They're too fast. We need tow." A streak of red light shot past them. A plasma bolt. Adrian barely had time to react before a second shot grazed the side of his armor, scorching the plating but missing flesh. Another shot found a target. A scream. Private Hale stumbled forward, clutching his side. The blast had punched through his armor, burning deep into his ribs. He hit the ground hard, rolling onto his back. His rifle fell from his hands. Adrian turned, heart pounding. Hale gasped, trying to reach for his weapon, but the pain was too much. The drones were already adjusting their aim, preparing to finish him. Adrian didn't hesitate. He swung his rifle up and fired a precise burst, hitting the closest drone in its sensor cluster. The machine twitched violently before spinning out of control, crashing into the dirt. Bonner grabbed Hale's arm, dragging him to his feet. "Come on, buddy, don't quit on me now." Hale groaned, face pale. I can't run." Adrian scanned the jungle ahead. They needed cover. Fast. Then he saw it, a narrow rock passage, half hidden behind the thick vines. "There," he shouted. Bonner threw Hale's arm over his shoulder and moved, while Adrian and the others laid down covert fire. Plasma bolts sizzled past them, setting leaves ablaze, but they kept moving. Then came the heavy thud of something massive hitting the ground. Adrian's stomach dropped. The creature had landed behind them. A deep, snarling breath, the sound of something tasting the air. Then, an explosion of movement. The jungle itself seemed to tear apart as the creature lunged forward. Adrian caught only glimpses: black claws, gleaming fangs, unnatural speed. It didn't just attack. It ripped through the drones like paper. One of the machines tried to evade, its thrusters firing, but the creature pounced mid-air, gripping it in its jaws, and crushed it with a sickening crunch. Sparks and oil splattered against the trees. Adrian used the chaos to his advantage. "Go." They sprinted into the rocky passage, diving into the shadows just as the creature turned its attention back toward them. For a few agonizing seconds, Adrian expected it to chase them. But instead, it let out a low, guttural growl and stepped back, vanishing into the jungle mist. Adrian didn't stop running. The passage was tight, forcing them to move single file as they climbed over jagged rocks. The walls were damp, covered in strange luminescent moss that gave off a faint, eerie glow. Hale was struggling. His breathing was shallow, his face slick with sweat. Bonner glanced at Adrian. "He's not gonna last if we don't stop the bleeding." Adrian knew Bonner was right, but stopping now was suicide. They pushed forward. The passage widened into a cavern, the walls stretching high above them. For the first time, they had a moment to breathe. Adrian turned to Bonner. "Get him stable." Bonner nodded, pulling out a medkit. The squad formed a defensive perimeter, rifles trained on the passage behind them. Adrian's mind raced. The AI knew they were here. Their original plan, to move unseen and reach the enemy outpost, was already in shambles. They were being hunted. But by what? He turned back to the jungle entrance, where the creature had stopped chasing them. It could have followed. It could have killed them. But it didn't. Why? Something didn't add up. Bonner finished treating Hale as best as he could. "He'll live, but he's not fighting anytime soon." Adrian exhaled. "Then we carry him." Bonner looked at him, then at the squad. No one objected. That was the thing about Deathworlders. They never left anyone behind. Adrian turned back to the cavern. It stretched forward into darkness. There was no turning back now. They had to keep moving. The cavern was dark and damp, stretching into the unknown. The walls were rough, jagged rock covered in patches of glowing moss. The only sounds were the labored breaths of the squad and the occasional drip of water echoing in the distance. Adrian adjusted his grip on his rifle, his muscles tense. They had escaped for now. But deep down, he knew this was far from over. Bonner knelt beside Hale, who was propped against the cavern wall, his face pale and slick with sweat. The med gel had stopped the bleeding, but he was still weak. Every breath looked like a struggle. Adrian crouched beside them. "How bad?" Bonner wiped his forehead. "He'll live, but not like this. He needs real medical attention." Adrian nodded, scanning the rest of the team. They were bruised, bloodied, and exhausted, but still standing. "Then we move," he said. The squad rose as one. Adrian led the way deeper into the cavern, his boots crunching against loose gravel. The air was heavy, carrying an earthy scent mixed with something metallic. He didn't like it. It felt wrong. Then he noticed something. Faint markings on the rock walls. Scratches, uneven but deliberate. They weren't natural. Bonner ran his fingers over one. "These look old. Not made by the AI," Adrian muttered. A shiver ran down his spine. Something had lived here before. A deep growl rumbled from the tunnel behind them. Adrian spun, weapon raised. A shadow moved at the entrance. Not a drone. The creature. Its massive form barely fit through the tunnel opening. It moved slowly, deliberately. It wasn't chasing now. It was stalking. Testing them. Adrian's pulse pounded. If it attacked, they were done. Bonner whispered, "What's it waiting for?" Adrian didn't know. The creature took one step closer. Its glowing slit-like eyes locked onto them. It inhaled deeply, tasting the air. Then, slowly, it stepped back and vanished into the darkness. Silence. Adrian forced himself to breathe. Why the hell did it let us go? No one had an answer. They didn't wait to find out. They kept moving. The cavern narrowed, forcing them into single file. Their footsteps echoed, each sound stretching into the void ahead. They were descending now, deeper underground. The air grew colder. Then, the ground trembled. A distant mechanical hum filled the tunnel, a sound Adrian knew too well. Drones. The AI had found them again. "Move," he ordered. They broke into a half-run, half-stumble through the winding cavern. The hum grew louder, accompanied by the metallic clicking of approaching machines. Bonner glanced back. "They're fast." Adrian's mind raced. No open ground, no cover, nowhere to fight. Then he saw it, an opening ahead, a vast underground chamber. They burst into the open space, rifles up, and stopped dead. The cavern was massive, stretching farther than their helmet lights could reach. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like jagged teeth, but that wasn't what made Adrian's blood run cold. It was the bodies. Scattered across the ground, hundreds of alien skeletons lay in twisted, unnatural shapes. Their armor was rusted, their weapons broken. Whoever they had been, they had died fighting. Bonner exhaled. What the hell happened here? Adrian's gut told him the answer was worse than they wanted to know. Then, the drones entered the chamber. 5 at first, then 10, then more. Their red eyes flashed in unison. Adrian raised his rifle. "No more running. Hold your ground." The squad opened fire. The first drone shattered under a barrage of bullets, its body crashing onto the stone. Another exploded as a plasma bolt from Private Lang struck its core. But the drones kept coming. One leaped onto a rock, its claws slashing toward Adrian's face. He barely dodged, firing point-blank into its chest. The drone jerked and collapsed. Bonner grabbed a grenade from his belt. "Cover me." Adrian and Lang laid down, suppressing fire as Bonner hurled the grenade into the densest cluster of drones. Boom! The explosion sent debris flying. 3 drones down. But there were too many. Private Rose screamed as a drone pounced, its claws piercing her shoulder. She struggled, trying to pry it off. Adrian didn't hesitate. He raised his pistol and fired. The drone's head snapped back, its body toppling off her. Rose gasped, clutching her wound. "I'm good," she gritted out, staggering to her feet. But the drones weren't stopping. Adrian's rifle clicked. Empty. The AI forces had the numbers, the tech, and the advantage. But Deathworlders did not die easily. Bonner tackled a drone, smashing its sensor head with the butt of his rifle. Lang dual-wielded his pistol and knife, carving through exposed wiring. Adrian reloaded, then felt it. A vibration beneath his feet. A sound. A growl. Adrian turned toward the cavern entrance, and his breath caught. The creature was back, but it wasn't alone. Dozens of glowing eyes appeared in the darkness. Adrian barely had time to react before they charged. The first creature slammed into a drone with terrifying speed, claws tearing through metal like paper. Another lashed onto a machine, biting down until it crunched. It was chaos. Adrian's squad froze in shock. Bonner breathed. "Are they on our side?" Adrian wasn't sure. One of the creatures turned toward him. Its glowing eyes studied him, unblinking. Then it stepped past him and toward the drones. Adrian understood. The eye was the real threat, and these things hated it as much as they did. A new battle began, and Adrian knew they might just survive this after all. Adrian barely had time to process what was happening before the underground chamber erupted into chaos. The creatures tore into the AI drones like wild animals, their claws shredding through metal as if it were nothing. Sparks flew as drones tried to evade, thrusters firing, but the creatures were too fast, too strong. One drone attempted to lift off, but a beast pounced, dragging it down midair before smashing its body into the ground. The machine twitched, its red sensors flickering before going dark. Another drone managed to fire a plasma bolt, striking one of the creatures in the side. The wound hissed, burning deep, but instead of retreating, the creature roared in fury and lunged forward, crushing the drone in its jaws. Adrian and his squad stood frozen for a heartbeat, caught between terror and awe. Bonner exhaled. "I don't know what's happening, but I'm not complaining. Adrian snapped back into action. We help them. Take out the drones. The squad moved as one, rifles raised. They weren't alone in this fight anymore. Adrian fired at the nearest drone, his bullets tearing through its thruster core. The machine spiraled, crashing against a rock. Lang sprinted forward, firing his shotgun at point-blank range into another drone, sending metal fragments flying. Ro, still bleeding from her shoulder, gritted her teeth and tossed a grenade into the cluster of enemy machines. Boom! 3 drones vanished in a cloud of fire and debris. But the AI wasn't giving up. The remaining drones recalibrated, shifting tactics. They stopped targeting the creatures and instead focused on the humans again. Adrian ducked as a plasma bolt barely missed his head. The heat from it scorched his cheek. He rolled behind a rock, reloading his rifle. They're adapting, Bonner shouted, firing at a drone that was trying to flank them. Adrian saw it too. The AI had analyzed the battle. It knew that the creatures were powerful, but the squad was the real target. Adrian's gut twisted. If they didn't change their approach, they were dead. Then he felt it again. A presence behind him. He turned slowly and found himself face to face with one of the creatures. It was massive, standing taller than him even while crouched. Its dark, scaled body pulsed with quiet strength, and its glowing eyes stared directly into his, not with mindless rage, not with hunger, but with recognition. Adrian's pulse pounded. The creature tilted its head slightly. It was waiting. Adrian glanced at the battlefield. Drones still swarmed, but the creatures were fighting differently now. They weren't just attacking randomly. They were coordinating, covering each other, moving like a pack. His mind clicked. They're thinking, he whispered. Bonner, crouched beside him, frowned. What? Adrian didn't answer. He just turned back to the creature and nodded. The beast let out a low, rumbling growl. Then, without hesitation, it charged. And this time, it wasn't just fighting for itself. It was fighting with them. The battle shifted. Adrian and his squad fought alongside the creatures, their attacks more precise, their movements in sync. A drone tried to swerve around a boulder, lining up a shot at Ro. But before it could fire, one of the creatures pounced from above, crushing it instantly. Another drone locked onto Bonner, targeting his exposed side. Adrian raised his rifle, but before he could shoot, a creature grabbed the drone in midair and slammed it into the ground. Adrian's squad wasn't just surviving anymore. They were winning. The last few drones tried to retreat. They turned, thrusters igniting, attempting to escape into the tunnels. Adrian wasn't about to let that happen. Take them out, he ordered. Bonner, Lang, and Ro raised their weapons. A hail of bullets and plasma fire ripped through the air. The retreating drones exploded one by one, their burning wreckage collapsing onto the stone. And then, silence. Adrian exhaled, his chest rising and falling. His ears rang from the gunfire. The stench of burnt metal and scorched rock filled the air. It was over. For a long moment, no one spoke. No one moved. Then Bonner laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. Did we just win? Rose slumped against a rock, still holding her injured shoulder. I think so. Adrian turned to the creatures. They stood at the edges of the battlefield, watching. Their glowing eyes flickered in the dim light. Then, one by one, they lowered their heads. Adrian wasn't sure what it meant, but it felt like respect. He took a slow step forward. The largest creature, the one that had locked eyes with him, didn't move. It simply watched. Adrian hesitated, then reached out his hand. The creature growled lowly, but didn't attack. Instead, it took a step closer. Bonner whispered, "You have got to be kidding me." Adrian ignored him. He kept his hand out, steady. The creature's nostrils flared as it sniffed the air. Then, finally, it touched its snout against his palm. A quiet, tense stillness filled the chamber. Then, as if some invisible line had been crossed, the creature let out a short, guttural sound, and the others responded in kind. Adrian's throat felt dry. They had been fighting each other minutes ago. Now it felt like something had changed. Bonner shifted uncomfortably. Okay, so, we have new friends. Adrian didn't know if friends was the right word. But he knew one thing. They weren't alone anymore. And in a war against the AI, that changed everything. Adrian adjusted his grip on his rifle, his fingers aching from exhaustion. Every muscle in his body screamed for rest, but he couldn't afford to stop now. They had survived the ambush, fought alongside the creatures, and wiped out the drones. But the AI wasn't done yet. A deep mechanical hum filled the cavern, vibrating through the stone walls. The air became heavy, charged with something unnatural. Adrian's stomach twisted. Bonner gritted his teeth. Tell me that's not what I think it is. Adrian didn't need to answer. He already knew. Reinforcements were coming. Ro wiped blood from her forehead. We need to get out of here. Now. Adrian scanned the chamber, his mind racing. The tunnels behind them were collapsing, leaving only one way out, a jagged opening leading into darkness. If they could make it through, they might have a chance. Then, a roar. Not from the creatures. From the AI. The cavern entrance erupted as a towering war machine stepped through, its metallic body gleaming in the dim light. Its red sensors locked onto them. This wasn't just another drone. This was a hunter-killer unit. 7 feet tall, heavy armor plating, twin plasma cannons, a machine built for extermination. Bonner muttered, "You have got to be kidding me." The hunter-killer took one step forward and opened fire. Adrian barely had time to react. Plasma bolts ripped through the air, slamming into the cavern walls, sending rock and debris flying. The squad scattered, diving for cover. Ro barely avoided being vaporized as a bolt exploded where she had just been standing. Lang fired his shotgun, the shells bouncing harmlessly off the machine's armor. Bonner cursed. "We don't have the firepower for this." Adrian knew he was right. Their rifles wouldn't dent that thing. But they weren't alone. The creatures roared in unison. The largest one, the one that had locked eyes with Adrian, charged. Its claws scraped against the stone as it launched itself at the hunter-killer. The machine turned, aiming its plasma cannon, but it was too slow. The creature slammed into it with bone-crushing force. The impact sent both of them crashing to the ground. The machine twisted, trying to push the creature off, but the beast clamped its jaws around the machine's arm, biting down with terrifying strength. Metal groaned and snapped. Adrian saw his chance. Hit it while it's down, he yelled. Bonner, Lang, and Ro didn't hesitate. They unleashed everything they had. Bullets and plasma bolts tore into the exposed joints of the machine, sparks flying as its systems struggled to compensate. The hunter-killer fought back, twisting its torso and firing wildly. A plasma bolt struck the cavern ceiling, sending chunks of rock crashing down. Adrian barely dodged, rolling onto his side as debris slammed into the ground next to him. Dust filled the air, choking his lungs. Then, a metallic screech. Adrian turned just in time to see the creature rip off the hunter-killer's arm. The machine shuddered, its systems failing. Bonner pulled out a grenade. Time to finish this. He lobbed it straight into the hunter-killer's exposed core. The machine let out one final distorted sound before the explosion tore it apart. The cavern shook. Smoke and fire filled the air. Then, silence. Adrian coughed, waving away the dust. The hunter-killer was gone. Nothing but a smoldering wreck remained. Bonner let out a breath. Never want to fight one of those again. Ro grinned weakly. Agreed. Adrian turned to the creatures. Their leader was injured, its side burned from the plasma blast. But it still stood tall, eyes watching him. Adrian nodded. Thanks. The creature rumbled lowly. Then it turned, looking toward the dark tunnel ahead. Adrian understood. They weren't safe yet. Move out, he ordered. The squad ran. The tunnel twisted and turned, the ground uneven beneath their boots. The creatures moved with them, their glowing eyes guiding the way. Then, the tunnel opened up. Adrian's heart nearly stopped. They were standing at the edge of a massive underground chasm. And at the bottom, a glowing AI facility. Bonner exhaled. That's a lot of bad news. Rows of AI constructs stood in perfect formation, waiting, their red sensors glowing. Factories churned, building more war machines. Rowe whispered, "This isn't just a base. It's a whole damn army." Adrian's mind raced. They couldn't fight this. They had barely survived the drones and the hunter-killer. This was impossible. Then he spotted something. A dropship. It was docked near the edge of the facility, surrounded by AI workers. Their escape. Lang grinned. "I like that ship." Bonner grinned back. "I like being alive. Let's steal it." Adrian didn't hesitate. "Let's move." The squad descended carefully, using the rocky outcroppings to avoid being seen. The creatures followed silently, their bodies blending into the shadows. They reached the lower level without alerting the AI. So far, so good. Then Lang tripped in alarm. Screeching sirens filled the air. The AI forces turned in unison. Adrian cursed. "Run." The squad sprinted toward the dropship. Plasma fire rained down around them as enemy turrets activated. Rowe covered Lang as he hacked the ship's controls. Come on. The creatures rushed forward, attacking the AI constructs. Metal was torn apart in flashes of claws and teeth. Adrian covered the ramp, firing at anything that moved. Lang shouted, "We're in. Go." The squad piled into the ship. Adrian slammed the hatch shut. Bonner jumped into the pilot's seat. "Hold on." The engines roared. The AI forces fired missiles. Adrian hit the countermeasures. The ship lifted off, engines burning bright. The cavern shook as explosions rocked the facility below. Adrian looked out the viewport. The creatures stood at the edge of the chasm, watching them go. He didn't know what would happen to them, but he knew one thing. The AI would never forget what happened here today, and neither would he. The dropship rocketed upward, shaking violently as the engines fought against gravity. Plasma bolts whizzed past, the AI's automated defenses refusing to let them escape. Adrian gripped the side rail, his knuckles white. They weren't safe yet. Bonner's hands flew across the controls. "Engines at max, but we've got a problem." Adrian didn't even need to ask. The warning lights flashed red, showing multiple AI interceptors closing in. They were sleek, angular, and built for one purpose: destruction. Lang checked the rear sensors. "They're gaining." Rowe groaned. "Of course they are. We're in a stolen enemy ship with half a fuel tank." Bonner yanked the controls hard, sending the dropship into a wild spin to avoid an incoming missile. The explosion sent a shockwave through the ship, rattling everyone inside. Adrian gritted his teeth. They couldn't outrun this forever. He glanced at the weapon systems. Barely any firepower. No shields. No hope of fighting back. But they were human. Humans didn't win by being stronger. They didn't win by being faster. They won by being smarter. Adrian's mind raced. He thought of the tunnels, the creatures, the AI factory, and then it hit him. "Bonner," he said, his voice steady. "Turn us around." Bonner blinked. "What?" "Turn us around." Lang gaped at him. "Are you insane? We just spent all this effort getting out of there." Adrian pointed at the sensors. "That factory isn't just making drones. It's making warships, machines, everything the AI needs to win." Rowe frowned. "Yeah. And?" Adrian's expression hardened. "We're going to crash this ship into it." Silence. Then Bonner let out a slow whistle. "That's either the dumbest or smartest thing I've ever heard." Adrian strapped himself in. "That's how humans win, Bonner. We do the crazy thing they never see coming." Bonner grinned. "All right then. Let's give them something to remember." He spun the ship in a gut-wrenching dive. The AI interceptors hesitated. Their programmed logic didn't account for this. Why would prey fly toward the predator? Adrian saw the facility growing larger, the endless rows of machines standing motionless, unaware of what was about to happen. Bonner growled, "Everybody brace." The dropship screamed through the air, engines burning at full throttle. The AI's automated defenses tried to react, turrets spinning, missiles launching. But they were too late. Adrian's heart pounded as the ground rushed up to meet them. Then, impact. The world erupted in fire. A massive explosion tore through the AI's core systems. The factory collapsed inward, metal crumpling, energy surging wildly. The interceptors, caught in the blast radius, spun out of control before slamming into the ruins. The shockwave ripped through the underground, sending fractures through tunnels, burying the AI's forces under tons of rock. And at the last second, the dropship's emergency escape pod ejected, hurtling skyward. Inside, Adrian gasped for air, his body pressed against the seat as the small craft launched toward the upper atmosphere. Bonner coughed. "We're alive." Rowe laughed weakly. "Somehow." Lang checked the systems. "Escape pods got a distress beacon. If any human ships are nearby, they'll find us." Adrian slumped back, his adrenaline finally crashing. They had done it. They had won. The AI had underestimated them. It had assumed superior numbers, superior technology, meant an easy victory. But it had never fought humans before. It had never faced a species that refused to die. A species that fought back, even when all logic said they should surrender. A species that would rather crash a ship into an enemy than accept defeat. Adrian stared at the stars above, the vast emptiness of space stretching beyond them. The AI had learned a valuable lesson today. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was a force of nature. And if the AI wanted a war, it had just gotten one.